In the shimmering hall of the Lancaster Grand, where crystal chandeliers poured molten gold across polished marble, the room shifted as every gaze slid away from Evelyn Lancaster standing alone beside a carved stone column. Nathan Carter, waiter, widower, and father, set his gleaming tray aside and quietly extended a hand toward her. A hush rippled like wind through silk. The orchestra lifted a familiar melody, the same haunting tune from that fiery night long buried in silence. Henry Lancaster, ruler of the empire that bore his name, stalled mid-stride, his expression carved from frost. With the first turn of the dance, truths he had buried for years stirred restlessly beneath the surface. The Lancaster Charity Gala was crafted to showcase dominance. 300 guests adorned in couture glided through the ballroom like strategy pieces aligned on a glittering board. Every greeting was an investment, every smile a transaction. Nathan wove among them with the grace that made invisibility an art form, his steady arms balancing crystal glasses with effortless discipline. His presence was strong enough to command attention, yet he moved with the quiet certainty of someone who had learned to survive unnoticed. Against the far wall, half concealed by the marble pillar, Evelyn watched the sea of wealthy faces. Once, her eyes had glimmered under stage lights. Now, at 24, they held the muted glow of embers struggling against ash. Her hair, a soft cascade of gold, was gathered low, and her gown, a deep midnight blue, carried her like a shadow draped in elegance. The right side of her face bore the memory of fire, delicate yet devastating scars that traced her skin like a map etched in flame. 7 years had passed since she had been the city's rising star, and now she lingered at her father's celebration like a forgotten ghost at an event built on illusions. Henry Lancaster ruled the center of the hall, magnetizing the room with the weight of wealth and command. At 58, he wore authority the way warriors wore plated steel, each silver strand of hair deliberately placed, each gesture sharpened to perfection. The empire of Lancaster Holdings stood upon his obsession with flawlessness. His icy mirrors of his daughters swept across the ballroom, cataloging influence, but when they passed over Evelyn, they slid on indifferently, as if she were merely another ornate fixture blending into the architecture. Nathan absorbed everything while appearing oblivious. Years of service had trained him to see without being seen. He watched Serena Blake, the impeccably controlled chief operating officer, orchestrate the event with the precision of a commander, her tablet an extension of her will. He observed Dante Cooper, the public relations mastermind, drifting between clusters of guests, his charming smile stretched thin over perpetual calculation. He noticed Vivian Moore, social media royalty, capturing curated glimpses of extravagance for an audience addicted to polished fantasy. But his gaze returned always to Evelyn. All evening he had noticed the subtle shifts of her posture, the way she shrank closer to the column when strangers brushed past, how her fingers quivered as she reached for her untouched glass. His hand instinctively brushed the small music box hidden in his jacket, the one his late wife, Amanda, had once gifted him. Sometimes it chimed a single wandering note, an echo of a life that slipped away too soon. The event unfolded seamlessly. Henry mounted the stage, announcing the charity's newest venture with the commanding tone of someone who had never tasted denial. Cameras burst with light as he inscribed donation figures, each signature reinforcing the fortress of his legacy. The applause rose obediently, volume proportional to status. Through it all, Evelyn remained tucked into her quiet corner, an exquisite tragedy people pretended not to notice. The murmurs followed her like trailing smoke. The fallen princess, the gifted dancer whose future had burned to ash, the daughter who embodied her father's deepest shame. Years earlier, the Riverside Theater had overflowed for the Youth Ballet Company's season debut. Evelyn's name had illuminated posters across the city, her destiny poised to ignite headlines. The stage was adorned with elaborate scenery-painted forests designed to transform into ethereal kingdoms. Backstage, she was adjusting her costume when wisps of smoke curled through the air, subtle enough to blend with the excitement. The fire had ignited in the lighting grid, a faulty wiring combined with neglected maintenance. Corbin Hayes, the veteran stage engineer, had submitted multiple warnings about unsafe equipment, each ignored in favor of cost-cutting and deadlines. The sprinkler system had been shut down for repairs that never happened. Fire exits had been partially blocked by oversized props. Every neglected duty converged into one catastrophic moment when flames cascaded from above like divine retribution. Evelyn had raced to protect a younger dancer when the burning backdrop plummeted. Synthetic fabric melted upon contact, searing into her skin with merciless permanence. The right side of her face endured the brunt of the inferno. The fire had burned so fiercely that it destroyed nerves entirely in some places, granting numbness that felt like mercy, while leaving other areas raw and tormented, alive with ceaseless agony. Her hands, once instruments of grace, trained to carve emotion out of motion, had been scorched as she tried desperately to shield herself. Henry Lancaster had arrived at the hospital flanked by attorneys before the medical team had even finished their initial evaluation. While Evelyn lay sedated, her body waging a battle against shock and infection, he was already shaping the official version of events. The narrative delivered to the press was polished into harmless simplicity, an unavoidable mishap, a tragic turn of fate, no fault assigned to anyone. Insurance would manage the bills. The Lancasters requested privacy. Yet the truth the public never glimpsed was that Henry himself had approved the very budget cuts that eliminated essential safety upgrades. His signature stamped every document Corbin Hayes had tried to contest. The theater, a philanthropic trophy listed under Lancaster Holdings, had been nothing more than a convenient tax benefit. Henry had smothered the investigation before it could draw breath, paid off inspectors, and ensured the final report blamed an unpredictable mix of unfortunate circumstances rather than negligence. Nathan knew none of this as he moved through the swirling elegance of the gala, but he recognized suffering it had lived in his own home. His wife, Amanda, had died 3 years earlier after a grueling battle with cancer, a fight that devoured their savings and their hopes. Just before her diagnosis, he had been offered a touring position with a jazz ensemble, the opportunity he had chased since his college days. Instead, he had stayed, learned to braid little Lily's hair, and taken any job that could cover hospital bills. Even that hadn't been enough. Now, his nights alternated between playing piano in hotel lounges and serving champagne to people who burned through more money in an hour than he earned in weeks. The gala marched on with staged precision. The band, led by Finn Morgan, performed pleasant, harmless classics, songs designed to complement conversation rather than stir emotion. Finn, 35 and classically trained, had once envisioned concert halls. Now he directed wedding playlists. Serena Blake hovered near him like a general, ensuring discipline, repeatedly reminding him which tracks must be avoided. No somber melodies, nothing evocative of sorrow, nothing from the Riverside Theater's final season. In another corner, younger guests, those who treated galas like opportunities to drink and network, had discovered Evelyn. The comments, meant to be whispered, carried clearly through the room. "She used to be gorgeous," a woman remarked carelessly. "What a tragedy. I heard she barely leaves her house. Why bring her here? Putting her on display is cruel." Nearby, Vivian Moore had begun streaming live. Her camera panned across the ballroom, capturing curated glamour. She avoided focusing directly on Evelyn, yet carefully allowed her to linger at the edge of the frame, a figure of wounded beauty, enhancing the scene's emotional contrast. Tragedy improved engagement. She knew audiences devoured such juxtapositions. Henry returned to the stage for his keynote address, and something flickered in his expression as he spotted Evelyn in the periphery. He abandoned his prepared speech. "Beauty," he said, voice sweeping through the suddenly silent hall, "is more than what we see on the surface." But we live in a world demanding perfection. Lancaster Holdings has always stood for excellency, uncompromised standards in all things. We cannot accept anything less than the absolute best. The words fell heavy, sending ripples of unease across the audience. Evelyn's grip on her champagne glass tightened, her knuckles paling with the strain. She had grown accustomed to stares and whispers, yet her father's carefully wrapped condemnation